So Gus joins us now. Gus, I just want to tell you, man, first of all, I know it's early. Thank you for waking up early. I know you were up late covering the Pels game. But if it makes you feel better, you should have an early Christmas present in the mail today over there in Metairie. So
you see that?
Be on the lookout for cracklings.
That's the kind of stuff that makes me feel real good in the morning, man. How you doing today?
I'm all right, man. Battle a little cold. Saints, Falcons, we'll get into it. Let's start with the Pels this week, though, man. They kind of got, blown out on Tuesday.
Right.
But yesterday, last night was the much more disappointing loss to me. You lose in overtime to the Jazz, a team, frankly, you don't really match up great with. But you're 1-4 in overtime this season. Jordan Clarkson got hot against you, and whether it be a little defensive breakdown here or there, the inability to grab consistently defensive rebounds when Jonas was off the floor. But I get having Nance out there because of all the switching Utah does on the pick and roll. But just a disappointing loss last night. Again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's a long NBA season. But that one last night, Gus, that one hurt. I mean, you haven't had a 3-game losing streak all season. Now you need to beat the Suns tomorrow to make sure you don't do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like C.J. McCollum kind of saw this coming, predicted it, or if you're a diehard Pels fan, you're blaming him, right? Because he said after the game on Sunday that, it's not always going to go well, and you're going to have ups and downs in the season. Just like you win games, you're going to go through a stretch where you're going to lose some. And look, Tuesday was a different loss than yesterday, Scott, in that you saw, I think, to me, and I know Willie Green and the team, actually nobody even really said that, but I thought, you having to play essentially 2 playoff games on Friday and Sunday against the Suns emotionally, mentally, and physically, I think that drains you a bit. And I saw some, dead legs. I mean, the amount of air balls and things that you were seeing were pretty incredible. So I kind of figured that. Last night, man, you just, there were 2 stats that just constantly kept, staring at you. And it took them forever to get going from beyond the arc. And that's a struggle that they've had for a good part of this season. And that's something that needs to get better. If not, you're going to struggle to win games, and that's 3-point shooting. And, was it 54-36, I think, is what it was, the amount of made threes that they had compared to you. I mean, you actually made more shots. The Pelicans made more shots than the Jazz. The difference is some of their made shots were threes, yours were 2. That's a difference. And that prevented you from winning. And the key stat that Todd told us in the pregame, I asked him, every time I chat with him before we tip off, what's the one thing to keep an eye on? And he said turnovers. They turned the ball over a ton on Tuesday, and the Jazz were taking advantage of it. And it was 33, I think, to 15 was the difference. That the same number of turnovers, but the Jazz were converting on those turnovers, and the Pels were not. So in a game that you lost by 3, 5, something like that, in overtime, you lose the game because of lack of 3-point shooting, and you lose the game because you didn't take care of the basketball, and when you got turnovers, you didn't convert, and they did. And that's where it is. And I think that's the one thing I take away out of these losses, Scott, is that I think you see a team that, yes, they did lose to the Jazz in those 2 games, but I also think that in these 2 losses, it's as much of what the Pels did or didn't do as opposed to what a team did do. And I'm not saying that you don't credit Utah by winning. They made the shots. They made the plays. You didn't. What I'm saying is I think that's the one thing I do take away this, and you don't, I guess, freak out if you're a Pels fan, is that the Pels can play better in those 2 games. They can do things that you can say, hey, look, those are things and areas that you can fix. It's not that they can't do it, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And they've only lost back-to-back games once this season. They were close losses. It was on a road trip, Hawks Pacers early in the season. You know, you haven't lost 3 in a row all year. You're coming off a 7-game win streak, which was the longest in the NBA when it happened. You know, McCollum on Sunday, as you pointed out, after the emotional win against Phoenix, said, look, I don't want to get too up or too down about any of these games right now. I mean, it's December. But, you know, he's a player, not a fan. So the fans are going to do what they're going to do. But that one last night, you feel like in all the overtime losses, right? Obviously, naturally, when it's a game that's that close, you look back and say, man, this one thing here, one thing there. When in reality, it's a number of things. And you got to turn the page quickly because you're on a flight today excuse me, to take on a Phoenix team where obviously no love lost. Third time you're playing them in 8 days. They were, you know, I mean, you look at the overall standings, they might be 4th in the West, but they had lost 5 in a row until last night when they played a Clippers team that rested everybody. So, you know, take it how you want it. I mean, they were on the road and played a Clippers team that literally rested everybody. And it was the last game of a long, 4-game road trip from them. They had been away from home for a long time. So it was one of those games where the Clippers just decided we're gonna rest guys and give them this one. But it gives Phoenix a win heading into this. I'm sure Phoenix being back at home, getting punked by the Pelicans last week, it should be an emotional game tomorrow night, Gus. What are you anticipating?
No doubt. I think one of the things that you're going to probably expect is that we were actually talking about on the broadcast. Think gladiator, think a hostile environment, booze, language. I fully expect that. So, look, we were talking about it on Monday, Todd and I, before the team left us, and I said it on our talk show. I said, look, I'd be greedy and say you want, a 3-0 road trip, but I would have liked the 2-1 trip, right? I thought one of those 2 games against Utah is going to be tough to win, and I thought Tuesday would, just because of everything. And I thought, hey, look, you come back, you bounce back, you're going to play better. And they did. I mean, they played better on Thursday as opposed to Tuesday. And then I'm like, look, the team against Phoenix, and that's kind of a toss-up to me, but you can win it. And so I thought it would have been nice to have that 2-1 road trip. But, now you're really hoping not to come back and take on Milwaukee on Monday on the 3-game losing streak, right? So, that game, look, they all become pivotal. But at the same time, I think having perspective on certain things really helps in that what a difference a year makes from this standpoint, Scott. You going up 10 games above 500 when you left on this road trip and beating the Suns like you did allows you leeway, right? Allows you a little room here. Look, it's unfortunate that Ingram suffers a setback in rehab. I mean, he's been out. It's going to be 20-plus days now, by the time he comes back, if he comes back next week. So, this toe sprain has kept out another option, another scorer, another person that can handle the basketball, somebody that can do assist as well. And even in the wins, they were harder because you don't have him. So he's going to help in instances and in moments that you're starting to see right now, right? And that is that when Zion Williamson is not on the floor, this offense kind of goes kaput right now. And it's because the guys that are role players that have been playing well for you, they've been struggling. I mean, Trey Murphy hit that game-tying 3, but, Scott, he could not buy a bucket. He was 0 in Utah for most of that game. And the one before, he had 0 points on Tuesday. You can't have a starter have 0 points. That just makes it harder for you to win. Despite what Zion's doing, you have to have other points. CJ didn't play well Tuesday. He did yesterday, which is why you had a chance to win that game. But I think it's interesting what Willie Green said, too. It's that, you saw, at least in his mind, the team kind of take the foot off the gas in the third quarter when you had built a big lead, came out on fire or something like 14-1, 14-2 to start the third. That should send you on your way to a win. But, look, again, I keep bringing up that three ball, dude. It is the equalizer in the NBA. It's why the Rockets can beat the Suns. It's why you see any team on any given night, man, if they get hot from beyond the arc, you're in for a ball game, even if you are a great team, even if you are a good team. And it just happens. I mean, you're seeing it. You look at the team that I think is a tough matchup for the Pels because they're very similar to them. It's Memphis, and they are rolling right now, and they absolutely obliterated Milwaukee.
Maybe they crushed them. They crushed them.
I mean, but look, you look at the shooting percentage. Milwaukee couldn't get out of the 30s. So it happens. It's this year's NBA. It's what you and I have talked about. It's just Willie Green said it yesterday. It's the Western Conference. It's how it is. If you do not show up and play,
yeah.
You're going to lose.
Here's another thing I want to point out. Gus Kattengell, our guest, great Scott. She'll give me a you got Friday 103.3 the GOAT simulcast on 1420. Pels are 12-3 at home, 6-7 on the road. By the way, Grizzlies also have a losing record on the road, but they've won 7 in a row, and they're kind of in that spot that New Orleans was, Sunday after they beat Phoenix in terms of how they're rolling right now. My point is this: both of these teams rely a lot on their bench. Both of these teams have a lot of depth. We've talked about the Pelicans having their deepest team in franchise history, and you've had to rely on some of those guys in starting minutes with some of the injuries you've had. Herb returned, this week, but Ingram's still out, and we know that a number of guys have missed time. But Antonio Daniels says this a lot on the TV broadcast, and he's right. Role players play better at home for the most part. Yeah, I'm not saying a role guy can't have a big night on the road. Sure. I'm not saying that. But as far as consistently as a group, and man, it's like truer words have never been spoken as it pertains to this year's Pelicans team.
100%.
Role players are so much more confident, so much stronger. I mean, look, Najee Marshall in the knife, by the way, is a perfect nickname. I hope that sticks. He kind of, I would say he's kind of an exception. We've seen him have, good games on home and road. Kind of doesn't matter. But, for a lot of these guys, if you just start breaking down their stats, the role players, maybe not Zion, maybe not Ingram, maybe not McCollum, but when you, maybe not JV, but when you start looking at a lot of the guys that come off of the bench consistently, or if all things are right, look, if everyone's healthy, you're coming off the bench. And you look at those guys in the rotation, their numbers are better at home. And that's not a surprise. That's not anything new. But I think it's a big part of your 12-3 at home, your 6-7 on the road, is those role players when they're at home. And it's good to protect home court. I get it. But, seeing a guy like you mentioned, Trey Murphy, seeing a number of guys that, how they play on the road versus at home, and the fact that the role players not a big surprise, but definitely worth pointing out for this Pelicans team that, second place in the West right now, but one tough stretch, you can go from first to fifth like that. So you want to take care of business tomorrow night. And I think the depth, the role players, how are they going to do against Phoenix on the road as opposed to how they played last Friday and Sunday, which was absolutely fantastic.
Right. And then again, and that's why it kind of goes back to the importance of having, a guy like Brandon Ingram's got to get back on the court, man. And why you need him, and the importance that he brings to you. It's just, you go back to the play-in game and how this team ended last season. A guy's capable of being able to do that on the road and play that way and not be affected, like you're saying, by either being on the road or being at home. And, I guess the thing, too, that's just frustrating, yet at the same time calming, is, you're seeing what these role players and these other players are doing, and they can do better. Like Trey Murphy's normally not going to go scoreless in a game.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
The game Tuesday was the worst, probably the worst game of his professional career.
Jonas Valanciunas right now is just, he's in a slump. I mean,
offensively, no doubt. Offensively, no doubt.
And also, I'll add to the defensive side because he's picking up fouls. It's frustrating him, I think, on the offensive end and defensive end, and I think it's affecting a lot of aspects of it. And I know that was a big topic on social media yesterday. And look, I actually do think yesterday was actually one of those games this season where you're like, man, I'm not saying I'm questioning Willie Green, right? More basketball than me, but I was kind of sitting here thinking about some of these rotations and plays and things of that nature. I'm a huge Billy Hernangomez fan. He's got size. I love what Larry Nance has done as well, but Larry Nance is a player that comes off the bench just like Billy does as well. And I think yesterday was, 6-7 times late in that game in the fourth quarter, man, whether it's being out-rebounded, not in position, or just I thought it was a rough game for Larry, to be honest with you, on the defensive side.
Yeah, the defensive rebounding, as much as Jonas is struggling, and I'm going to defend him for a minute offensively, and you're right. He's had some dumb fouls. He's second in the league in defensive rebounding rate, and when he's not on the floor, I know fans focus so much on offense, but like the defensive rebounding. People look at Zion. I'm like, he's hustling out there. It's these other guys. It's the Trey Murphys. Yeah. It's the Larry Nances. Yeah. They've got to hit the boards because there were so many times last night where Utah one possession, they get 4 opportunities. No doubt. And in a game where you lose in overtime, it's like, all right, so Jonas on the switch, but they were still getting the switch they wanted even when Nance was in there. Yeah. So I'm like, Willie, I know you don't have enough timeouts to like go back and forth, but when you're getting killed on the glass that many times, man, it's tough.
I mean, it's like I said, yesterday was probably the one game this season where, as a media member, fan, I think, you could scratch your head a little on some of those things. And man, I get explained it. I still don't understand it. I, for the life of me, can't understand how you don't find a way to be able to somehow get Billy Hernangomez in the game, man. I can't. All I know is that when he does play, he's a guy that can get you double-digit rebounds. And in a game where
he's a rebounder. There's no question. I mean, he can.
And in a game where you need those boards and that's what they're doing, and it's late. That's how it goes. Here's the other element of it, Scott, that they struggled yesterday. Shooting free throws. Billy shoots free throws. He's fundamentally sound around the basket. This isn't a team that you were playing yesterday that is up and down transition to the basket. They're up and down transition to the three-point line. And, to your point, and again, it's why I keep bringing it up. Look, I mean, you're injured, but it's a reason you got to get Brandon back, and you will. But the difference that he makes is you look at one of those key late marketing three-pointers when, the ball was kind of going everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And Conley drives. Najee Marshall leaves him. And I have no idea why he's going to the paint. He has, Conley is stopped at the restricted area. Zion's on him as well. There's no reason to triple team him. And Najee leaves him wide open, and the guy knocks down the three. He's been killing you since tip time, and that's a guy you have to put a body on and keep from shooting a three-pointer. And you didn't. So, but again, Najee isn't a starter. I love the guy. He's a hustler. You probably don't win many games. You're probably not in a situation to win games yesterday without him. He had several and ones, but it's who was on the court to end that game. And that's the thing, man. That just hurts you. But again, here's the beauty of it. Unlike a year ago, where we're looking at that going, you just can't beat that team or whatever team because you don't have this, or that. We're sitting here breaking it down on a Friday morning, Scott, looking at it from the perspective of the Pelicans didn't execute, didn't finish, didn't make the smart play, didn't do this, that they're in control of, as opposed to not being able to have it, right?
Sure.
That makes sense? Like boxing
absolutely.
out and rebounding, making a shot, having a starter in the game that can provide you points and spacing and assists. So I think that's the thing that actually calms you, right, is that, man, I think the Pelicans are a better team. But at the same time, man, it's just like anything else. It's who you have on the field, on the court, on the diamond that day. And that's who plays, and that's how you determine the W and L. So they've been really good for most of the season in being able to have a lot of players step up, but it makes it harder. And I think that's a disappointing thing that despite all of that, they should have won that game.
Yeah.
They absolutely should have won that game, and you heard him say that last night, that that's a game that they should have won. So, you know, now you put yourself in a little tougher spot because Phoenix is going to be pretty tough tomorrow. And, you know, at worst, now you're coming home on a 3-game losing streak, and you're taking on a pretty good team in Milwaukee.
Gus Kattengell, our guest, Saints and Pelicans correspondent. Gus, the Saints, I talked to you about them on your show Wednesday. I'm going to sound like I don't know. How do I put this? I'm going to sound like I'm putting myself on some pedestal. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'll just say this.
That's okay.
I can tell someone's age when they start talking to me and they're like, I mean, what's the big deal? Saints, Falcons, you know, it doesn't matter. I mean, the season's lost. I'm like, wait, did you say doesn't matter? I'm sorry, what now? Like, how long have you been a fan? Because I don't care what the record is. If anything, shoot, man, this thing might matter more. Like, the Saints, I don't care how bad the NFC South is. I've been telling Saints fans for 6 weeks, they're not going to win the division. Stop getting your hopes up about it. It doesn't matter. And I think when they blew it to Tampa, that set in a little bit, despite the fact that all the teams still just keep losing. The one thing right now, you don't have a first-round draft pick. All this stuff has gone bad. You know, you hit rock bottom, 12 or 11 days ago. I mean, you're coming off of a bye. You only have 4 games left. If you can sweep the Falcons, I mean, I can at least hang my hat on that. I can at least say, well, you know what? All-time record, regular season, now tied. Now the Saints have an edge by a game. All-time record between the two is tied. Falcons have that one postseason win. I mean, the Saints held the upper hand in this rivalry all time for, a couple of weeks in 1967. Like, that's it. That's it. And then, the first game ever in the history of the history of these franchises they played, the Saints won. The Falcons won like the next 11. And then, I mean, for years they had such a large edge. And then, Sean Payton, Drew Brees get there. They start chipping away. Oh, Matt Ryan, he's 10-17 all time against the Saints. Like, they have chipped away, and here they are in a rough season where things have gone badly, and you have a chance to sweep them. Like, don't tell me it doesn't matter. All right, you asked me, how can you get into this game Sunday if you're a Saints fan? I'm like, you can't look at it in the grand scheme of this season. You have to look at it in the grand scheme of this rivalry. And if you do that, then yes, they might frustrate you, but if you come and tell me that Sunday's game doesn't matter, I will pull your fan card. You don't care about the Saints if you think Sunday's game doesn't matter. It matters.
Yeah, and look, to your point, too, it was interesting to hear Demario Davis, Taysom Hill earlier this week kind of touch on professionalism, what their job is. At the same point, that's almost disrespecting a game if you don't show up and play. I mean, Demario Davis, I thought, was on it when he said, look, not everybody gets to play this game, and every opportunity you do, you have to take advantage of it. I liked hearing, from a number of players this week, specifically talking about and touching on the opportunity and chance to do that. Pete Werner, predicting and saying, hey, we'll be 4-0, the rest of the way. So I think you have a lot of prideful guys, and more importantly, not just from a fan's perspective, Scott, but I think from an organizational perspective, right? I mean, I am paying attention to this last 4 weeks, not because of whether or not I think this team can make the postseason, but I think it's going to, present to you as clear as you can picture the direction that you need to go in this offseason as a football team. Are we going, flat out rebuild? Is his team show up and play for its coach? Do you see the effort and the energy? To your point, this is a game where you shouldn't have to get up and go and do. They're starting a rookie quarterback. If the defense can't stop this team, they don't have Pitts. They have a rookie quarterback in his first start. They get waxed out there. It's going to make you start thinking different things, right? If the offense, again, struggles, doesn't get the ball to Alvin Kamara, especially after he sits there this week and he's asked, hey, how do you get more screen passes? He goes, he's going to have to talk to Pete Carmichael about it. I mean, it's, there's storyline after storyline after storyline after storyline that is that's important. It's important to the franchise. It's important to, as you mentioned, the rivalry and where it needs to go. So I think you absolutely are seeing something that you have to know. I guess, from a franchise perspective and a team perspective, and you talk about series history and all that, man, it does matter a lot. But, yeah, I mean, to the most foundational thing about it, at the end of the day, like you just said, it's the bleeping Falcons. You can't let them beat you, because it does absolutely put an exclamation mark on just a yuck season for you, and something that you want to be able to salvage. And salvaging parts of your season is respectability, and not losing to a team that is hated, right, in and around the area and all that. So, yeah, man, I'm with you. I think it is a big game for a handful of reasons here as well, man, from the different topics that we talked about this week. It wasn't just, wins and losses, but decisions being made from the quarterback. What does it mean? Drew Brees gets the job at Purdue. He tells WWL yesterday, though, that he has no plan.
How about that, huh?
I'm not buying it.
Yeah, I mean, like, that guy wants to. He wants to do something with football, man. He does.
There is no doubt.
He's trying to scratch that itch, man, and everything he's trying, it just doesn't seem to be working,
Well, dude, Alvin Kamara said it. It was funny yesterday. He goes, I think Drew's just bored. I guess he doesn't think that he wants to eventually be a coach or something like that, too. But, man, like I said, I just look at everything, and I think it's a team, and it's a situation where there's a lot there, man. And it's crazy because you almost overanalyze it to an extent, right? If the offense doesn't do this, it's a Carmichael thing. If the defense doesn't perform, is it really Dennis Allen? If the players don't, this guy, does he want to be here or not? Should you start this guy? Why aren't you starting Winston? What's the worst it can be?
That's what happens when you're losing, man. Yeah, that's what happens when you're losing.
Look, it is. It's exactly right. Because you start questioning, asking, and wondering in a handful of different areas of what it is that's going on. And that is the Saints season this year.
We're at the bottom of the hour. I got to let you run. Final question. You don't have to be long with it. I've been telling fans, Sean Payton's not coming back. You got to quit. You got to quit reading he should. You got to quit wishing. Right. All right. You're not getting it under the Christmas tree. He doesn't want to coach the Saints. He's going to always say nice things about him. Why wouldn't he?
Sure.
He did a lot of great things. They paid him a lot of money. It's still a good relationship. He's not coming back. So
sure. He's not going to be under the tree. Not wrapped in blacking old foil paper.
Jeez, man.
Okay. Right.
No. He's not coming back. I don't know, man. I imagine you've probably heard from some of your listeners about this, but he ain't coming back.
You know what's interesting is when I read the Jeff Duncan headline, and again, sometimes these reporters don't make the headline, but obviously there was a purpose and a point in the column, and I understood what he was saying, and he's giving his opinion as a columnist that if he does come back to coaching, it should be here, and then that's followed up by, sources or people close to the situation, think that he's considering and thinking about it. Look, I think there's a logical reason why you hear that, and that is because yet again this week on another podcast, again, his agent's doing incredible work.
This is all calculated.
Oh, my God.
Everything Sean Payton has done in the last year as far as his future has been calculated. And I mean everything down to the very last detail.
Yep. He's on another podcast this week where he's sitting there going, the key as to where I want to go is the relationships and having the trust with the front office and this and that. And look, the obvious answer to that is it's not anywhere better than New Orleans, right? So when you hear that and see that, and then the headline of Jeff going, hey, look, he could be coming back here or considering or is thinking about it, that is tugging at the heartstrings. It's the person that you had a relationship that you've broken up with, knows you will never get over, you or that person, and knows it. And look, I think
and it improves the market for them,
Absolutely, because if you're another team that is going to make a run for them at the end of this year, and those teams already know who they are, it unnerves you a bit. It makes you go, oh, do we need to, up the ante? Do we need to make sure we reach out through back channels right now and do all those different things? Because here's what I said on the show earlier in the week. If that is the case, and you're thinking about doing it, right? Like, Scott, if you wanted to come work with us or I wanted to come work with you, I'm texting you, right? I mean, if you have that kind of relationship that you're saying, the way I had it in New Orleans is what I'm looking for elsewhere, then if he really was considering New Orleans, it's a simple text to Dennis, it's a phone call to Gail, it's a text to Mickey, or a phone call to Mickey. Hey, I'm thinking about coming back, and would you guys have me back? Or something. Like, that's something that absolutely would stay between Sean Payton and any member of the Saints organization, wouldn't it? I mean, we didn't know until Gail Benson and Sean Payton, to a point.
No disrespect to Jeff. No, I'm not trying to disrespect Jeff Duncan, but literally 3 days before the Saints basically said, yeah, Sean's going to leave, he wrote an article saying everyone needs to relax. He's not going anywhere. I'm just
right. Well, and that's what I'm getting at.
Correct.
Nobody even knew about it, right?
Right.
Nobody knew that Gail Benson offered him more money and told him he could take the year off. It never got out. You see what I'm getting at?
Right.
If he wanted to come back to this organization, no one would know about it. No one. So, because he would be asking or talking to that organization itself. So it's clearly a play. But you know what? What I found interesting, Scott, was when I brought that up, I had maybe a phone call that was like, hey, of course we'll have him back. But it was overwhelming, the amount of people that said no thanks.
Okay.
I think the fan base is, I wouldn't say upset, but I think they go, hey, you left us. And look, and I said it, everybody has every right to go somewhere where they're happy. Do what they want to do. I completely understand change of scenery. I can understand taking a break. I can understand, hey, you know what? And the travels that I've had, whether it's with Tulane or Saints and all that, there's a lot of beautiful areas of this country, man. And believe me, if I had the opportunity where I could choose my destination, I could triple my salary, I could go to a bigger market, I could be the afternoon drive at a big city or work for ESPN in D.C. or something of that nature, or I'd absolutely consider you. It would be foolish not to. I love New Orleans, but some of my best experiences have been, seeing redwood trees out in California, the ocean, mountains. I mean, that's me. I would love that. I absolutely would consider it, if not do it. So I'm not angry at Sean. You won a Super Bowl. You had 15 years. That was pretty much a consistent winner, except for a couple of seasons. I get it. But, Scott, I'm telling you, most of our calls were, it's time to move on. It's time to let it go. Yesterday when I brought up the Purdue thing on the show, people are like, man, let it be. Well, Drew, because here's the thing. I don't see that happening either if he is going to coach again. If he is going to go, it would make sense to be the quarterback's coach. It would make sense to do it in the city in the team that he's already been working with. I made a point last year. I thought it was odd, and I get it because he lives there, so it's closer. But that guy didn't come spend a week or 2 days at Saints training camp and work with Jameis Winston. He didn't come work with any of the quarterbacks over here and help them with the offense, and that's with Sean Payton here. Now, at the time, I'm like, look, I get it. Maybe him being here, his figures, and, he's trying to have Jameis win the team, be the leader. He has to let it be organically. If he's always there, it's going to be hard. I get that perspective, but that guy was never here. Conversely, training camp several times, and in the regular season, he went to the Chargers and worked with Justin Herbert. Now, Lombardi's there. They're buds. It was a favor, but he did. He has worked with Justin Herbert several times already. Lombardi's there. You know me, I've been saying it. I think it's the likely destination. It's the one that makes sense. It's a ready playoff team. They just need a better head coach. You have a franchise quarterback who's amazing, and I could absolutely see Drew being a quarterback's coach. Only responsibility is help Justin Herbert. Lombardi's there. Peyton, the coach. That's where he's going to go. I just, this notion that he's going to be the offensive coordinator here in New Orleans, again, it's I can't let it go and think that he can come and do it. Look, if you were going the route of a new young head coach, you're hoping that they draft a quarterback that's going to make it. You're hoping that he can help develop him, and you're hoping that it all works out. And that's experienced people that would take the head coaching job, like you see, whether it's Hackett and other guys of that nature. Drew's never done it. So to think that Drew's going to come in, even if you keep Dennis and you draft the quarterback and you hope that it all works out and he's going to be able to do it, that's still a risk. So I think if I'm Drew, the thing that makes the most sense is, Sean, wherever you go, I'll go. I'll be the head coach. Or I'll be the quarterback's coach. And I think that would be the more likely thing. So I don't buy what Drew was saying, that this ain't a niche. That it's just
he just, you know what? Maybe he just doesn't want to be like Tom. You don't want to be like Tom. Maybe he hadn't told the wife yet. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I think that's
maybe it's like I can't say anything publicly.
Oh, that's so cool.
Until I talk to Brittany.
Like, I think it'd be great for you to go. But look, they have no head coach because he left Louisville. The starting quarterback, tight end, cornerback, and wide receiver are all not playing. You essentially don't have Purdue from the regular season playing in the game against LSU. You're not going to win that game. What is he doing? So, so you can help recruit now. Actually, you have less restrictions on you as just being Drew, the former Purdue future NFL Hall of Fame quarterback, than you do by putting on a school shirt and a headset, because now you have limitations. So, yeah, it makes zero sense that this is just, I'm just there to be with the school and everything. Really? Because that's not the regular season team that's playing. You can't exactly help with recruiting by going and doing that, especially if you're going to tell everybody, that's not what I want to do. You may not want to go coach college. And that's kind of maybe what I see. He's not exactly lying to you, Scott. He's just saying, no, there's no interest in coaching maybe at that level. And then, look, it's like Nick Saban. I had no intentions of being there until that offer is made. He hadn't been offered anything.
Great stuff. Gus, we're going to let you run, man. Thank you for doing it this morning. I know you're busy. I hope that Christmas present I sent you is supposed to arrive today. So I hope it's still fresh. I hope it's still good. And we will talk to you next week, my friend.
Sounds good, man. Thank you, Scott.
You got it. All the best. Gus Kattengell.